5 ways you can increase your self-worth, guaranteed. So self-worth is one of the biggest things that my clients that are entrepreneurs and professionals come to me asking me to help them with. They're always asking, how do I increase it? Or I struggle with the low self-worth. Where does that come from? And I always give them these clues and these strategies, and a lot of these clues and strategies I'm gonna give you in this podcast. But one thing that I always make sure I go over is why this is important. And I wanna tell you, your self-worth and the reason why we want to improve it is important because your self-worth will determine the habits and the actions that take place in your life. You know, there's a great quote by James Clear. He says, we don't strive to our goals, but we normally fall to our systems that we have in our life. What I'm trying to say is that the way you see yourself, the value that you have for yourself will determine what actions you start to take place, the actions that you start to do, the things that you don't do. And when you do these things or don't do these things, it will determine the quality of your life. In sports, when we see athletes, let's take basketball, when we see athletes get tired, they typically revert back to old habits. Now, if your old habits are bad habits, well, guess what? You're gonna play a pretty bad game. We saw this a lot with Luka Doncic when he was in the NBA Finals. Like when you get tired, when times get tough, if you do not have a good system to fall back on, if your self-worth is low, you're gonna do bad habits, if you will. And for some people, this may be, some addictive things. It could be looking at porn, it could be smoking, it could be drinking, it could be avoiding, it could be procrastinating. So many different things. And that's why we want to focus on your self-worth, because when you have a good system in place, when you have a good foundation in place, right? So your self-worth is in a good standing, there's just certain actions that you're not going to do. And by not doing these bad actions, trust me when I say the quality of your life will steadily increase, if you will. And that's what we're going to go over in this podcast. So before I get into step number 1, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. And trust me when I say the tips I'm going to give you in this podcast, but also tips that I'm going to give you in future podcasts, will help you to build your self-worth. So go ahead and join the community by hitting the subscribe button. So one thing I'm going to do in these podcasts, right? One thing I'm doing in this podcast is so different from any other podcast is that each answer is going to come from a quote. It's going to come from a quote of a famous person. And these quotes are going to help you build your self-worth. All right. So let's start off with point number 1. It comes from a quote by the one and only Malcolm X. And he says, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. And I love this, right? So how does this tie into your self-worth? Well, here's the thing. You have to understand what it is that you value in your life. Because when you understand what you value, there are certain things that you want to do to bring down those values or to go away from those values. Because each and every day you're going to be given opportunities to go against your morals, to go against your values. I love looking at this from the lens of social media. Social media has a way of throwing out all these desires, these lusts, these things that may seem nice. It may grab your attention, but when you look at it from the long haul, when you look at your values and what you want your life to stand for, I think a lot of these things are not really valuable, if you will. So what you want to do is have a good lens that you can filter your social media through, these lenses being your values, and it help you to not fall victim to comparison. Because when you're comparing yourself to the millionaires, the billionaires, and all that other stuff, and if you are a millionaire or billionaire, this is okay. But when you're filtering your life through the lens of millionaires and billionaires, you're going to look at your life and you're going to ask yourself, why does my life not look like that? Well, who says that your life has to look like theirs in order for you to have a high sense of self-worth, for you to be worthy? This is what I mean by this. When you have something that you're going to stand for, you're going to stand for it. But if you don't, you'll fall for anything. You allow the world, social media, even just the random Joe that's across the street, you allow them to determine what you should have in your life. And if you do that, your compass will always be swirling around, never having a true sense of north, a true sense of directions, if you will. So when you find your values, the next thing you need to do is you actually need to stand for it, but make sure you're taking actions that are aligned with those values. And here's the thing. A lot of these actions, guys, they're going to feel uncomfortable. And that's something that I love doing. When you do uncomfortable things, it reinforces in your mind that you have an ability to do tough things. And what does that do? It increases your self-worth. It increases your courage as well. So what I want you guys to do is to find something to stand for and stand for it. Trust me when I say there's going to be wins right? And when I say winds, I mean like gusty winds. It's going to try to knock you over. But if you're going to stand strong, if you have a solid anchor, right? This anchor being your values, no matter how strong that wind comes, you're going to be in your place. You're going to stay solid on what you stand for. And when you do that, your self-worth will increase. All right, main point number 2, this comes from the one and only Maya Angelou, so a famous great poet. And what she said was, as you grow older, you will discover that you have 2 hands, one for helping yourself, the other for helping others. And I think a lot of people don't have a problem with helping others. It's that first hand that they struggle with. It's almost as if like that one hand is like handcuffed to like a rail or something like that, and you just can't break free, right? The hand that is designed to actually help yourself. You know, one of the beautiful things you can do is actually be selfish. And I know that sounds crazy, but one of the beautiful things is you can do is be selfish so that you can go back into the world and operate at a higher level. You know, I'm not saying that you're God or Jesus or anything like that, but in the good book, it even stated that God rested on the 7th day, right? All the work he did, and this is the one and only, right? The big man in the sky. Like, he did all that work, and on the 7th day, he rested. I want you to think about how much like rest would help you in your life if you really truly believe you deserved it. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people don't rest because they feel like they haven't earned it. Rest is something that's given to you. There's nothing you need to earn for the rest. Like you are by law given rest. We even see this in jobs, right? So every job you're required to have at least a 30-minute break, right? Like it's by law. So what I want you to do is ask yourself, what does resting look like for me? What is it that I need to do to take care of my mental, my physical, my spiritual? What are the things that I need to do to help me in those areas? Now, if you're listening and you're one of my action takers, so I have a lot of people that listen to my podcast, but I have a small section of people that are action takers, and I know you're going to be one of them. If you're one of those people, I would dare you to go on your phone and Google self-care wheel. When you Google self-care wheel, you're going to see hundreds of different self-care actions that you can take. And what's beautiful about this is that these actions are broken down into subcategories, if you will. So one of them may be professional, psychological, spiritual, physical, right, emotional. These are going to show you all the ways that you can practice self-care and how it can add to those different portions of your life. So guys, resting, taking care of yourself is directly related to your self-worth. And I know this to be true because when you look at some of your most prized possessions in your life, so yes, I'm talking about materialistic things, I'm willing to bet that you take care of those things, like you invest money into those things. So if you take your car for its routine oil change, that's showing that you care about it. If you constantly cleaning your house, cleaning the dishes, right? You don't let your house get all crazy and nasty. If you're constantly cleaning your house, taking care of it, yeah, that shows that you value it, that you see it as worthy. Even right down to your pair of tennis shoes, right? So I have a lot of Jordans that I wear. Some of them are still in boxes. And yes, I take out a scrub. I have some cleaning agent that I actually bought, so I don't just use any regular cleaning agents, but I use cleaning materials that is designed for sneakers. And I use that and I scrub my shoes. Why? Because I care about them. All right. The more you do for yourself, the more rest that you take for yourself is directly related to your self-care. So in this point, as Maya Angelou said, use that first hand to take care of yourself. And I'll even add this. I was going to add this, but I'll add this and then I get to point number 3. When you take care of other people, when you serve other people, and you're doing this through your gift, that will also increase your self-worth, because nothing feels better than helping people. It's just that you have to have a limit to it. You have to make sure that you're in a good place to be able to help others. And that's why you have 2 hands and not just one. All right, point number 3 comes from the one and only Mark Twain, very, very famous writer, poet, all that good stuff. And he said, a man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. And I'll actually read the end verse of this just to make sure that you guys understand it. So what he's saying is, a man can be comfortable when he allows himself to be comfortable. So what does this mean? What is this point all about? Guys, I want you to celebrate yourself. I want you to celebrate yourself and tell yourself that you've done a good job. You know, I even see this as a therapist, and it's funny. Like, I have clients come to me and they'll tell me something that went well in their life, and then they'll use the word but. And it's like, no, don't do that. When you use the word but, which means without, it negates everything that you said previously. I'll give you an example. Someone may say, oh, your friend, they're really nice, but they're short. And it's like, oh man, I guess they're not nice at all, right? It just totally takes away the compliment that you just gave. And it's the same thing that you do when you're trying to celebrate yourself. It's like, yeah, I did a good job, but there's so much more to do. Or yes, I got to win today, but I'm still behind in my goals. It's like, guys, don't kill yourself over that, right? Like, trust me when I say, like, the way you celebrate yourself, it will signify a message to your brain that you've completed something, and it's something that you completed is worthy of celebrating. And guess who did this thing that is worthy of being celebrated? You did, which means that you are worthy. That's what we're trying to get to into this point, right? Again, Mark Twain says, a man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. So I want you guys to allow yourself to be comfortable, right? Allow yourself to celebrate yourself. Allow yourself to even, dare I say, be happy, right? And some of this, I think, is tough for people that are hard workers or that identifies with the value of hard work, because they believe that by being comfortable, they're losing their drive. But I have to tell you, comfort, right? That rest that we're talking about, it ensures that you are able to stand up to the long task, the tough journey of the goals that you set for yourself. Because I'm pretty sure you're not setting small goals. If you said, hey, my goal is to be a millionaire, to have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, like whatever it is, like those goals very well may take a few years, right? Are you up to the task? Do you have the energy to actually make it through the long haul? If the answer is yes, great, right? And you need to be one of the ones that's practicing self-care, as I previously mentioned, but you also need to be celebrating yourself on that journey. If you don't do that, you'll feel like this journey is taking forever, and you won't feel as motivated to continue down the journey as someone who celebrates themselves. Now, guys, I will admit, this is something that I did struggle with a little bit. You know, I actually will tell you this, and I'll move to the next point. So my birthday is August 20th, and it's on a Tuesday, and typically Tuesdays are the days that I work on my business. I don't see clients, but this is the one day that I'm really able to push the needle for when it comes to my business, some of the things that I have. And I'm really struggling with the idea of just taking that day off. Now, here's the thing I'm gonna do to help myself to do it. I'm gonna find all the things that I love doing. One of those things will be going to the beach. Another one will be going to see a movie. So the movie Aliens is coming out. So I'm gonna go see that. And then I'm gonna take myself out to a nice restaurant, right? And I have to do all this before 5 p.m. because I gotta go pick up my son from daycare. And that's another reason why it's so important. Like, there may be a good chance that your husband, father, mother, wife, right? Maybe even a caretaker. Nonetheless, a lot of people depend on you. And I need you to be able to celebrate yourself throughout this journey. And that's how you're going to increase your self-worth. Main point number 4, and this comes from Russ Harris. And what's great about Russ Harris is that he is actually a therapist that specializes in acceptance and commitment therapy. And what he says is that the goal is not to get rid of all your negative thoughts and feelings. That's impossible. The goal is to change your response to them. All right. So I want you guys to think about what he's saying. Because for a lot of people, they come to me and they say they have a low self-worth, and their number one fix is to start pumping all of this positive affirmations, right? All this positivity to themselves. And what actually happens is it has this like negative effect. When we start to say all these nice things to ourselves that we don't believe, it almost increases more of the reasons why we're not these things. So if someone were to say, I'm worthy, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm this, I'm that, and they don't believe it, their mind's going to actually show them all the reasons why they're not smart, beautiful, intelligent, and all the other things. And what we want to learn, what we want to figure out is that you do not have to have your mind on board in order for you to take action. So one of my clients talked to me about this literally the other day, literally yesterday. And as we were talking, he asked me this question about self-worth. And I told them, guys, like, you don't have to get your mind on board. You don't have to get your mind to even like you in order to do the things that you find value in. What you do is you do the things you find value in, and your mind is going to look and say, hey, I guess this is what we're doing today. It's going to look and it's going to say, hey, like, this is, kind of cool. We still aren't that worthy or whatever. And that's okay, right? Because at the end of the day, if you accomplish your goals and you're being valued or true to yourself based on your values, trust me, that feeling that you get will be more worthy. It'll be a better feeling than trying to get your mind on board. But here's the best thing about it. as you do the things that are worthy, your mind eventually will get on board because it sees that you're not playing around. So what I'm trying to say here is that you need to let go of the tug of war game that you're having between you and your mind. Because what's happening is that right now you're trying to force your mind to just say all positive things about you. You're trying to force your mind to love you and to approve of all the things that you want to do. But the mind just doesn't work like that. The mind needs a certain level of negativity in it to try to keep you safe, because the mind knows that negativity and danger are the two most powerful levers to keep you safe. So to a degree, your mind needs to be negative, but we just need to make sure that we don't allow that negativity to run every part of our lives. This is why we do not focus on trying to get rid of the negative thoughts or the feelings, as Russ Harris said, but more so we want to change how we respond to them. So this is where acceptance comes in. It's allowing your mind to say whatever it wants while you continue to focus on your goals and values that you set for yourself. As I said earlier with Malcolm X, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And some of these things that we fall for are the things that our own mind tells us. So focus on how you respond and let your mind be your mind, because you, my friend, are so much bigger than the things you think, because you are simply you. Wow, point number 5. Man, I can't believe you're still here. That's awesome, man. That's dope. I'm so glad that you're still here with us. And if you're still here with us, but you're not a subscriber, trust me when I say you're missing out. Man, we have a great community that we're building here on YouTube. And this community, they constantly reach out to me through my comments or a post or whatever it is, asking questions. And as I say, I always respond to my comments. So what I want you to do is actually subscribe to this channel, be a part of the community, and feel free to ask me some questions about your own self-worth, and I'll give you the best advice. As a matter of fact, I'll give you some advice that I didn't share in this podcast. Therefore, you'll feel like, man, this was really worth it. So point number 5, the last point, and this comes from an ancient Greek philosopher. His name is Epictetus, if I'm saying that correctly. And he says, if you want to improve, be content to be thought of foolish and stupid. It's like, whoa, coach, you asking a lot from me, right? Nah, not at all. Like, what is he saying in this quote? Well, to be able to improve in all aspects of your life, relationships, your career, even your physical health, right? Like anything, you need to be willing to be seen as foolish, be seen as stupid. In other words, he's talking about you need to be willing to be vulnerable. By being vulnerable, you show your mind that all of you is worthy. We're not trying to just hide or show certain aspects of who we are, like the best parts, right? Because if you're only willing to show the best parts, you fall into this thing called being a perfectionist. And being a perfectionist is a very stressful and very high anxiety inducing way of living. You do not need to be perfect to be great, to be loved, or definitely to be seen as worthy, because nobody on this earth is perfect. And why do you think that you need to be perfect? Well, it's probably because you're struggling with some fears of what people would think if you weren't. Well, if people think less of you because you're not perfect, that's their own opinions. And their opinions is not as worthy or as important as the opinions that you have of yourself. So what is it that you're willing to be stupid about? What is it that you're willing to be thought of as foolish? In other words, what new things are you willing to try? Or in what areas of your life are you willing to be vulnerable, willing to be open about, in order to move the chains in your life, to just move things forward? Because when you do that, you're sending a signal to your mind saying that, hey, you're good, you're worthy. Even as you're trying to do something that's uncomfortable, we know that we have this ability to get stuff done, to get the hard stuff done. And that's what we want to do. So real quick, I'm gonna go over these 5 main points to help you to build your self-worth guaranteed. So the first point that I made came from Malcolm X. He said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. The second point that I made came from Maya Angelou, who says, as you grow older, you will discover that you have 2 hands, one for helping yourself and the other is for helping others. And I talked about self-care about this point. The next quote came from Mark Twain. He says, a man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. And this is where I talked about being able to celebrate yourself, allow yourself to be happy, to be comfortable. The fourth point I made was, the goal is not to get rid of all your negative thoughts and feelings. That's impossible. The goal is to change your response to them. And this is by Russ Harris. In other words, guys, you don't have to get your mind on board every single time. You don't have to convince your mind to like you. Go and do the things that you value, as I said in point number 1. And then your mind will start to get on board because it sees that you're not playing around. And then the last point that I made came from Epictetus, who says, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, guys, be vulnerable. Be willing to try something new. Be willing to fail. That's a big one. And trust me when I say, you'll send the most powerful message to your mind, which is a message of self-acceptance. So this is Coach Wells. Thank you for checking out this podcast episode, and hit that subscribe button so you can get more content and you can be a part of the community. All right, guys, I'll see you later.